Liebe Webinarteilnehmerinnen, liebe Webinarteilnehmer, ich darf Sie recht herzlich begrüßen zur heutigen Webinarpräsentation von Axino Capital. Wir präsentieren die Granite Creek Copper, ein Kupfer-Explorer im Yukon, Kanada. Mein Name ist Wolfgang Seibold. Ich freue mich, dass Sie hier sind. Also, wie gesagt, es geht um Kupferexploration, eine Batterie-Metallbranche. Da wollen wir einsteigen. Aber bevor es losgeht, ganz kurz noch unser Disclaimer. Wir sind kein Finanzberater, wir sind ein Kommunikationsdienstleister und Investor. Wir müssen darauf hinweisen in unserem Disclaimer, dass Sie auf eigene Rechnung, eigenes Risiko handeln. Wir keine Empfehlung aussprechen. Lesen Sie bitte diesen Disclaimer auch im Nachgang. Bevor wir starten, natürlich möchte ich Sie eintauchen lassen in die Explorationsaktivitäten von kleinen Junior Mining Companies. Hier eine Videopräsentation von Invest Yukon zur Verfügung gestellt. Sie sehen gleich das Projekt, Sie sehen Explorationsaktivitäten und natürlich Tim Johnson, den President und CEO der Gesellschaft. Wir sind gespannt. Ich starte dieses Video. Bleiben Sie dran.
Welcome to the Invest Yukon site tour. I'm Tim Johnson, CEO of Granite Creek Copper. We're here on the Kupfer-Carmacks-Projekt, located in Yukon Territory of Canada. Kupfer-Carmacks-Projekt is a regional scale project. The two properties combined, the Kupfer-Carmacks North target area and the Kupfer-Carmacks-Projekt, is roughly 177 square kilometers. Just about the entire length of the project has the potential to contain rafts of high-grade mineralization that could be developed into a mine. Currently, the Kupfer-Carmacks deposit is just under 24 million tons, grading 0.85% copper, 0.3 grams gold, and about 4 grams silver. We're standing at the Discovery Trench, which sits approximately in the middle of Zone 1. So this is the oxide portion of the deposit. About 200 meters below us, we transition to sulfide. We are also roughly 5 kilometers north of the camp, and then across from us, across the valley, is zones 13 and 12. Our 2021 drill campaign focuses on up to 13,000 meters of drilling, both diamond and RC. The diamond drilling we're doing this year is primarily focused on resource expansion. We need the core to be able to model our resource. The RC drilling that we're doing this year is focused on earlier stage targets that we can quickly drill off and get an idea of the tenure of the mineralization and the direction the mineralization is trending. The infrastructure on the Kupfer-Carmacks-Projekt is really good. We're very pleased to be working here. We're within roughly 12 kilometers of grid power. We're within 12 kilometers as the crow flies of paved road. Minto Copper Belt is a geological oddity, actually. It's a group of rocks with high-grade copper in them that extends all the way from just south of our project all the way up to Minto and beyond. And they can be really high-grade, up to 2 or 3% copper in places. The Casino project, owned by Western Copper, is just down the road from us. The significance of that is that they recently got a major cash infusion by Rio Tinto, which I think moves that project ahead a lot. And that's very good for us because that road that goes right by us, that moves that up the scale to be developed and possible power as well. I'm excited about our Kupfer-Carmacks Copper project because I think we're entering into a very interesting age in development of copper mines. We've got a project that is very near production. We've got excellent grade, we've got excellent infrastructure, and I don't see the price of copper going down anytime soon. So as far as sort of perfect storm of having a great project, really good commodity prices, and in a jurisdiction that is relatively easy to develop, everything lines up.
Ja, ein idealer Einstieg und sehr beeindruckend, was auf dem Projekt gemacht wird und wie Exploration funktioniert. Bevor wir jetzt noch starten, hier ganz kurz offengelegt unsere Interessenkonflikte nach der MiFID-Regularien und der Definition. Wir haben zwei davon. Einmal sind wir Aktionäre von Granite Creek Copper und zum anderen unterhalten wir einen Kommunikationsdienstleistungsvertrag mit dem Explorer. Wir reden über die Batteriemetallbranche. Sehr, sehr interessant, weil natürlich diese Kupfernachfragen sehr, sehr stark steigen werden durch die E-Mobilität. Das ist ja allen schon bekannt. Granite Creek Copper passt genau hier rein. Informationen über das Unternehmen finden Sie auch auf Deutsch unter axinocapital.de/granite. Ja, jetzt noch eine Frage. Warum ist die ein Teil dieser Metallic Group of Companies? Was bedeutet das? Es ist ein Unternehmensverbund von 3 kleinen Explorationsunternehmen. Group 10 Metals hatten wir letzte Woche vorgestellt. Heute, wie gesagt, die Granite Creek und nächste Woche die Metallic Minerals. Alle 3 Unternehmen nutzen ähnliche Ressourcen, sei es Geologen, sei es externe Berater, Partner, Ingenieure. Das braucht man ja alles, um erfolgreich ein Unternehmen aufzubauen. Und diese Synergien in der gemeinsamen Nutzung ist sicherlich definitiv gegeben, aber auch die Einsparungen, die finanziellen Einsparungen sind hier signifikant. Wir als Investoren wollen ja, dass diese Explorer möglichst viel Geld in die Explorationsaktivitäten, sprich in den Boden investieren und nicht für Overhead ausgeben. Hier spart sich eine Metallic Group of Companies Gruppe doch erhebliches Geld ein. Wir schauen hier jetzt noch auf die Aktionärstruktur und auch die relative Performance. Wir haben nur 121 Millionen Stand heute Aktien ausstehend. Der Kurs ist circa bei 0,17 kanadische Cent. Das ist nicht mal eine Marktkapitalisierung von 25 Millionen Kann-Dollar. Also Sie sehen das Unternehmen noch relativ klein in der jungen Phase, obwohl sie schon doch sehr viel Kupfer gefunden hat. Im Chart sehen Sie auch die Entwicklung parallel zur Kupferpreisentwicklung. Das ist also relativ parallel vonstatten gegangen. Allerdings so die letzten 6 Monate kann man schon sagen, ist der Kupferpreis nicht so stark eingebrochen wie die kleinen Unternehmen generell. Die Explorationsunternehmen haben stark gelitten, so auch die Granite Creek Copper. Ganz wichtig zu erwähnen ist eigentlich hier die Aussage, dass Insider und Management und Closed Associates, das sind also ich sage mal, Aktionäre, die dem Management sehr nahe stehen, die halten 35%, eine beachtliche Anzahl. Also auch das Management hält hier doch einige Aktien und soll auch den Vorteil haben, wenn das Unternehmen entsprechend sich weiterentwickelt. Wir haben hier einen 3-Jahres-Chart noch kurz in die Präsentation mit reingenommen. Warum? Sie sehen, wir haben eigentlich so zum ersten Mal im zweiten Halbjahr 2020 richtig Umsatz in die Aktie reinbekommen in Kanada. Dann hat es natürlich auch einen Preisanstieg mit sich gebracht. Das ist also schon eine klasse Performance. Die ging dann auch weiter nach einer Konsolidierungsphase im ersten Halbjahr 2021, in der Spitze dann Mitte des Jahres auf fast 30 kanadische Cent. Aber dann hat die große Konsolidierung hier eingesetzt. Wir sind sehr, sehr stark zurückgekommen. Jetzt hier einen guten Boden gefunden zwischen 15 und 20 Cent, wo wir uns aktuell bewegen. Sie sehen, da ist also viel Luft noch nach oben und wir glauben, die Granite Creek Copper kann hier noch einiges outperformen. Heute haben wir natürlich mehrere Themen. Wir wollen mit dem President und CEO Tim Johnson sprechen. Zum ersten Mal, warum ist der Yukon so heiß umkämpft? Gibt es da eine mögliche Konsolidierung von Projekten, von Gesellschaften? Wir haben das schon mal gesehen im Bereich der Goldminen. Also das steht vielleicht noch aus, auch im Kupferbereich und ist eine riesige Chance für eine kleine Granite Creek. Dann möchten wir natürlich von ihm das Karl-Marx-Projekt vorgestellt bekommen und auch die Strategie. Das beinhaltet auch die Nachbarschaft zum Minenbetreiber. Gibt es da Vorteile? Was bedeutet das für die Gesellschaft? Was bedeutet überhaupt das jüngste Listing von Minto Metals? Das ist der Nachbar. Die sind jetzt in Kanada börsennotiert. Ja, vielleicht ist es schon ein kleines Vorzeichen oder Anzeichen für eine mögliche Konsolidierung. Wir sind da wirklich gespannt, aber darüber wollen wir mit dem Management sprechen. Dann die Gesellschaft hat ja schon eine aktuelle Ressourcenschätzung. Gibt es da ein Update in 2022? Was liefert Granite Creek nächstes Jahr? die vorläufige Machbarkeitsstudie und auch der Minenplan soll ja optimiert werden, abgedatet werden. Man will hier 15 Jahre Minenleben dokumentieren, darüber sprechen wir. Und ich möchte natürlich auch wissen, wie kann sich so eine kleine Gesellschaft vor einer Übernahme schützen. Aber wenn es dann soweit ist, soll es sicherlich auch im Interesse der Aktionäre sein und sicherlich nicht zum Nachteil. Ganz kurz jetzt hier noch die Porträtierung von Granite Creek in unserem Investorenmagazin Stocks to Perform. Da finden Sie die zweiseitige Darstellung, wie auch die anderen Gesellschaften, alles auf unserer Webseite. Ja, jetzt sage ich herzlichen Dank schon mal fürs Zuhören und bleiben Sie dran. Sind Sie gespannt? Jetzt starten wir mit dem Vortrag. Ich muss jetzt ganz kurz mal switchen und dann kommt der Tim Johnson und macht seine Präsentation. So, jetzt gehen wir rüber. Er übernimmt. Bleiben Sie dran. Danke für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
All right, thanks, Wolfgang. I really appreciate the time, and I appreciate everybody that's here on the call today. To learn a little bit more about Granite Creek. I'm here with one of our project geologists, Jacob Longridge. So hopefully we can answer any technical questions that any of the viewers might have. But in the meantime, let's get to the presentation, and we'll walk you through some of the highlights of Granite Creek this year and what we're planning for next year. We'll just start at the beginning. So this is a picture of the drill from this year's drilling season. We drilled just around 10,000 meters this year. The purpose of the drilling was to upgrade the resources and to expand the resources. The company is fairly new. We acquired the project just last year in 2020, and the company itself was only launched in January of 2019. So really from a very early start in 2019 to where we are today, we've made a lot of progress. Wolfgang already mentioned the group of companies that we're a part of, the Metallic Group. Very strong group of companies, good support both on the technical side and the market side within the group. So I won't go into too much in there. But let's get to the Carmacks project itself. So the Carmacks project currently has just under 24 million tons measured and indicated, 0.85% copper, 0.31 grams gold, and 3 grams, just over 3 grams silver. The really important metric here that you should be looking at is the amount of contained metal we have. We have just under 500 million pounds contained copper, and about 2/3 of that is oxide, 1/3 is sulfide. But we think that the real target here is the underlying sulfide resources. So Jake, tell us a little bit about the sulfide that we intercepted this year in some of the zones. It was pretty spectacular, great.
Yeah, it was amazing. That's, our concept there was basically that there's oxide sitting on top of sulfide. And so the intention of the program this year was to continue that sulfide body down. Yep. And we accomplished that with pretty spectacular results.
Yeah, we did. So we'll get to the results in just a couple of slides. But near term, what you should be watching for with the company is some news flow that we have coming out. So we still have 2 tranches of assays to be released to the market. All of the assays from phase 1 have already been delivered, but we've got phase 2 and 3 still pending. We expect those fairly shortly. We launched a development project this year. We were looking at the previous preliminary economic assessment done in 2017 and seeing if we can make some changes to that, see if we can bring the sulfide into view to expand the mine life and expand the resources. So that news will be coming out, and we will be working on a resource estimate update based on this year's drilling. And of course, probably, I would say late or mid-second quarter of next year, an updated preliminary economic assessment. Great infrastructure for the project. We're within 12 kilometers of paved highway as the crow flies, about 30 kilometers along all-weather road maintained by the Yukon government, and we're within 12 kilometers of grid power. That road, of course, leads to the paved highway, to the village of Carmacks, Whitehorse, and ultimately to this deepwater port at Skagway, Alaska, where there's offtake facilities. So currently the Minto mine is shipping their concentrate at Skagway. So very good in that regard. Major investments continue in the Yukon. It's a great jurisdiction to work in. Rio Tinto just announced in May that they had invested $26 million in Western Copper. And that project that they put money on is just down the road from us. So in our area where we're working, there's lots of activity, lots of exploration and development. I just want to briefly talk about where we are on the development cycle for an exploration company. This is the Lassonde curve. So Pierre Lassonde is one of the was the founder of Franklin, Nevada. He brought the streaming model into the industry, but he sort of over time built this curve where he recognized how the market values a junior mining company. So we're at the preliminary economic assessment stage, sort of the second bar in there. And what you should see a 1 to 2% value of our contained metal. We're trading just under 1%. So that is a market opportunity as we move into a fair valuation in the 1 to 2% range. And then as we increase that metal and as we move up up the curve towards preliminary feasibility, the value that the market will give us for our contained metal will increase. So again, excellent entrance opportunity. We're just going to talk briefly about some of the drilling that we've done this year. So Jake, we drilled zone 1, right? And we were targeting, again, like you mentioned earlier, we were targeting the underlying sulfide. One of the things in zone 1, I know, and you can correct me, just about every sulfide intercept was greater than the current reserve grade.
Yep, that's correct, Tim. The drilling that was done to get an assessment on the contained metal in zone 1 was done by drilling mostly down the deposit. So we wanted to see if that was actually true of the entire mineralized interval. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to drill across that. And when we drilled across it, we found that the grades of that sulfide zone was a lot higher than was originally thought. And so we're kind of looking at that in the resource estimate to see how this year's drilling will increase the grade of the sulfide content in that portion of the resource.
Right. And then there's 2000 South. I think we're all pretty happy with the intercept that we got in 2000 South. I want to reference old CRM 2111. So we hit 105 meters of 0.96% copper, which again is above the current resource model. But what else about that hole is significant?
Well, it's significant, yes. As you pointed out, not only is the grade a lot higher than was previously indicated, we drilled way below the current level of that resource model. And so we are going to be updating the extent of that resource because we know there's a lot more sulfide down there. And that was most of the drilling that we did in that zone. It was not only to confirm the grade, but also to extend that down depth. And we hit in pretty much every single hole there.
Yeah, so I think we extended between 30 and some of the holes all the way to over 130 meters extension at depth.
Yep, so that was our phase 3 drilling was extending that even deeper.
Right.
What you're seeing there right now is the phase 1 drilling. Those results are now all out. And yeah, it just keeps going. It's great.
Great. So a little bit of work that we did was on one of the satellite zones. So this is a zone that's quite far north of the deposit. Well, not quite far. It's about 10 kilometers north. So within trucking distance. But the significance of this, we actually drilled this last year in 2020, and we hit a pretty spectacular intercept, although narrow. We hit 4.3% copper with 3.4 grams gold over 4.6 meters. The significance of this, it shows that some really spectacular high grade is possible on our property. Now, we didn't do any significant drilling there this year because we wanted to spend some time to really understand the orientation of the mineralization. So we did what's called an induced polarity IP survey. This is a geophysical survey that it detects some of the physical properties of the rock and can direct detect sulfides and by extension can detect oxides if they are over top of a sulfide. So we did what, 20 line kilometers?
Yep, we did 21 line kilometers over that area just to get an idea of the geometry there. It had a lot of historic drilling. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to see what that looked like deeper down. Before we spent any more money drilling that, we wanted to get a firmer idea on what that geometry is. And that's why we did the IP. Yeah.
I think, if I remember reading the report right, we've got about 20 new targets based on that IP survey that we need to follow up in 2022. So it's going to be an interesting field season out there in that part of the plant. Yeah.
Sure is.
So just briefly, we brought in two engineering firms this year. We brought in Sedgman Canada, which is a process engineering firm. So they look at what the best extraction method is for your various ore types. And we brought in another company called Mining Plus. Now, the reason we brought these two firms in was the previous preliminary economic assessment done in 2017 only looked at the oxide portion of the deposit, and it only looked at zone 1 in the oxide portion of the deposit. So we wanted to find a way and determine what the best method to process the sulfide ore is going to be. We wanted to confirm that the 2017, that the leaching technology that was proposed is going to be the most appropriate. And then we wanted to develop an underground mine plan for when the potential to go underground in probably year 8 or 9 of an expanded mine life. So we've achieved a lot of those goals this year. We have a preliminary underground plan delivered to us by Mining Plus, and we also have a sulfide processing plant. It looks like traditional flotation technology will work quite well here at Carmacks and the sulfide. So we're starting to add potential mine life by looking at holistically the entire deposit. So not just the oxide, but both the oxide and the sulfide. And then we're also looking at what order things could potentially be processed in. All of this work, of course, is leading to an updated preliminary economic assessment that we expect to deliver to the market mid to late second quarter next year. The Minto Copper Belt. Now, this is why I've actually invited Jake to come here, and we won't get too technical, but the way I understand it, this is a unique deposit. I don't think there's anything like it that I've seen anywhere in the world. We have copper mineralization contained within metamorphic rock that is then contained within a granite diorite. What is unique about this deposit, and what do you see the potential here?
Well, as you said, Tim, it's a rather unique deposit. Our current understanding of this deposit through a number of master's theses is basically that what's happened is you've had two terrains come together that have melted these potentially originally porphyry deposits and then entrained those rocks into a larger intrusive body. Now, what's quite surprising and great about this is that it extends from where we are through to Carmacks North and continues along through to Minto Mine, which is recently listed company, and their mineralization is very similar to ours. It's sulfide that's contained within these rafts, within these rocks that continue for up to 1 kilometer in length. And their grades up there are around 2%. Ours are pretty equivalent at 1% or 0.9% in zone 1. And yeah, it's a remarkable deposit because of its geological history. There's not much that's the same as what we've got around the world.
I'm glad you mentioned the Minto Mine. You're right. They just listed. They're publicly traded for 2 days now. So that's something to have a look at. And look at the valuation of the Minto Metals, that's the name of the company, versus us. Our stage, we think we should be around 25 to 30% of their value because they're a producer. We want to get there. So that's a good metric too, and very similar amount of contained metal. Grade, you're right, is quite similar. Their reserve grade is 1.75. About 2% when you add the precious metals to it. They're producing quite a high grade concentrate, over 40% at some times, which is pretty good. Of course, their offtake agreement with Sumitomo out of Japan, and their ore is shipped through the Skagway, Alaska terminal. Now, the interesting thing about this mill is the mineralogy of our deposit in the sulfide and theirs is very similar. So if there was a scenario where it made sense for our material to be processed at their mill, there wouldn't have to be any modification. That's a pretty forward-looking statement. Of course, there's nothing in the works, but I like to point out that's our possibility because I think one of the best things for Granite Creek right now is to attract one of the larger copper players to the belt that will recognize the potential of a mill that's fully permitted operation to the north of us. And then, of course, our deposit, which we are rapidly growing. to the south, which you know, is about 30 kilometers away from the active mill. So potential synergies there, nothing in the works, but I think a larger copper producer would probably recognize that opportunity. So just briefly where we have come from and where we're going before we get to a few slides about the copper market itself. Again, fairly new company, launched in January 2019. Within 24 months, we've gone from an early stage copper play to a resource stage company with an aggressive plan to grow those resources. We launched a 3-phase drill program this year. We started drilling in May. We drilled just about 10,000 meters. We completed 20 line kilometers of IP survey. We brought in a company called Goldspot. They're an artificial intelligence company that they use AI to parse large data sets. So we have a lot of data. I mean, this deposit was first discovered in the 1970s. There's been multiple exploration programs on it. The data set's been built up over the years. And you get to a point where you just cannot review all the data all at once. So if you're using an AI program to review these large data sets, to look at the different layers, the geophysical layers and the geochemical layers and the drilling layers, and to use pattern recognition to identify new targets, that's what the AI is good for. And Goldspot has developed several new targets for us based on their work. And we're excited to get back into the field in 2022 and follow up on those targets. Of course, we initiated the development of a new mine plan to include the sulfide ore that we will again deliver to the market mid-2022. And this year we uplisted to the OTC QB listing. Now, upcoming news. Drill results still pending. Resource update still pending. We will be delivering to the market some of the Goldspot work that's been done. We've talked recently, actually just released today, about some of the work that Sedgman has done for us. So look to our website for that news release. We will be updating our PEA first quarter of next year, and we will be talking about our 2022 drill plans. Now, I think probably just about everybody on this call understands how important copper is to our burgeoning green economy. I think we're in the electric age. We're not in the information age, we're in the electric age. Everything's going electric. If you drive a conventional internal combustion engine right now, vehicle, you've got about 33 pounds of copper in it. Sorry for the Europeans, I should have converted this to metric. This is left over from a US presentation because they don't get the metric system. But anyways, 33 pounds. But if you had a battery plug-in vehicle, that would jump to 183 pounds of copper. Now, the thing to remember about this, a 150-pound jump, this is new demand on the copper market. We are just getting into the green sector. So this is above and beyond any of the traditional demand. So this is going to be very positive for copper prices. And when you add to that the wind demand for turbines and the solar demand, we just see copper as being an excellent space to be in. Long-term copper supply, there are potential supply crunches. And a lot of this comes from some of the mines in South America that are getting very old and their cost to produce is getting higher. And the geopolitical situation in Chile and other South American countries is getting very tense. So there is potential supply crunches there. And of course, as we move into the later into the 2020s, we see a huge deficit in supply. So Goldman Sachs, which a lot of people follow quite closely, had predicted that copper price would flatten after 2025 and possibly decline. This year, they revised that, and they're now predicting the copper price to spike going into 2025 and beyond. And they just see continuing support for the copper price, and we think so as well. Just a little bit about our leadership team and our exploration team. As Wolfgang mentioned, we're a member of the group of companies, the Metallic Group. So we share a lot of resources amongst the companies, which allows us to attract expertise in specific areas that a single company wouldn't necessarily be able to afford. So we're very pleased with our team. They work very hard to explore for us and develop our resources, and to get to work amongst multiple projects. And then just a little bit about the track record of the value creation within the Metallic Group. These are some of the companies that the chair of the group, Greg Johnson, has previously been involved in. He was one of the founders of Nova Gold, and Nova Gold, of course, took Donlin and Galore from modest resources to world-class resources. And we see the same scenario for all three metallic group companies, both, and we've added a project to the companies every year since 2016. And lastly, but not least, is our share structure. Currently 121 million shares out, about $2 million cash on hand. We've got a bunch of warrants at 20 cents, which we've seen come in as our stock price gets above that 20-cent mark. No near-term financings, but probably sometime late first quarter to early second quarter, we will be going to the market to fund our 2022 exploration programs. And that is it for me. I'll turn it back over to you, Wolfgang.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim, for the excellent presentation. I hope our audience can get all those important topics. We have the first question, and the question is about how much of the property has been drilled in percentage, and what are the costs to explore further. So cost per meter would be interested, and how much money you want to spend in 2022. And the last question in this phase is, could you add additional blocks to your existing claims?
Well, that's a few questions. So any idea what the percentage of the property? I mean, a lot of the property has been really underexplored.
Yeah, we talked about that gold spot, looking at the AI, and what that was really good at is that we have a lot of soil data that covers the property. We have a lot of magnetics that has kind of covered the property. But when it comes to actually drilling, which is the true tester, that is a very small fraction of our property that has been drill tested. I'd say probably on the order of 1%.
Yeah, maybe one to five, somewhere
around there. Yeah. So yeah, not a lot of drilling that has been done, and that's the beauty of this stage is, you know, we've shown the metal content in one of those rafts, and there are multiple rafts that are of interest for us that we need to go out and explore.
Yeah. Cost for drilling. So all in for drilling is around $300 a meter. It varies a little bit depending on what additional support you need, whether you need to build some more roads but it's a road access property, so it's not a helicopter property. So the money goes into the ground as opposed to going up in the air. Our budgets for next year are going to be sort of in the 3 to 5 million range for exploration. A lot of our budgets are going to depend on the results of the updated resource estimate that we expect first quarter. That will tell us where we need to, how much more we need to explore. Ideally, I would like to get this to a 15 to 20 year mine life based on 5,000 tons per day operation. So once we know what our resource is at, then we can sort of figure out where the best place to expand. And then, is it possible to add new blocks? No, it isn't. All the available prospective ground is staked, and it's staked by two operators. There's ourselves, and there's Minto Explorations, now called Minto Metals. So everything that is available is held. There is some First Nations lands that would be available on a joint venture basis, but that's a little ways away, and it's something that we will explore, but that's not an immediate near-term thing.
We have another question, Tim. It's regarding the target outside of your existing resource. What is the material expectation grade? How big could it be? And what be part of the upcoming resource update? So what in addition do you expect? Doubling the resource, or what is the idea you can give us here without too much forward-looking statement, of course?
Yeah, that gets a little bit into some pretty forward-looking statements. I mean, we targeted a 25 to sort of 50% bump. That was our goal when we went drilling. Now we have all of our data with the independent third party, and they're reviewing it, and they will produce that updated resource estimate. So I know it's a bit of a vague answer, but you know that's what our target was, and hopefully fell within that somewhere. So the potential resources outside the current one, so the northern part of the claim block zones A, B, C, and D. What I can say about those is that when we look at these rafts, they range between a couple million tons, up to 5 or even 10 on the larger ones. And we know that they repeat themselves. So, they repeat themselves fairly regularly along strike, and they also repeat themselves at depth. So what we see the potential is if we tied into, 2 or 3 more of these zones that are really underexplored in the northern part, each one of them could be, say between 2 and 10 million tons. Could be. Until we actually get on them with the drill and work them out, then you don't know. But the interesting thing is, I think there's a lot of room for discovery on our claim block. The work that Goldspot did, the work that we've done in the past 2 years, putting all the data together, I think that's really where we are. And I mean, discovery is really what will be part of our focus in 2022.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
But Tim, in the past, you have outlined your goal is 1 billion pound of copper contained resource. Is that still something you think you can achieve with your drill campaign? Not certainly with only one, but as a potential of the size of the project.
Absolutely. I think the property has potential for multiple billion pounds of copper. And the reason that we started to use that metric, and we've talked about it a lot, is we know that that's the entry point for a lot of the major copper producers, right? They won't even look at a district unless you've got 1 billion pounds plus you've got some blue sky. So we wanted to show the market, we wanted to show these potential joint venture partners that it's possible and that we're working really hard to get there. So that's our goal, is to attract one of those larger players to the market.
So there is another question coming in for Jake. Is it mostly oxide or sulfide, and how are the grades potential? Will there be work done in 2022? I think it would be good also to explain our audience the difference between oxide and sulfide, and what does it mean when it comes to extraction of the metal.
Yep. So yeah, these bodies, we call them rafts, are basically tabular, elongate zones of mineralization. And when those are exposed at surface, they'll slowly start oxidizing. So the sulfide then turns into oxide, which becomes a green to bluish kind of mineral. That copper oxide can be extracted through the heap leach process that was done in 2017. That was the proposed method of extraction. The sulfide, it floats really well through a froth flotation, which was developed for porphyry deposits to help mine large deposits at fairly low grade. But the essence is that the chalcopyrite and boronite float really well. And the extent of that, the relative proportion, well, we don't know the full depth potential of these sulfide zones. We anticipated that they were much larger than originally thought. And that's why we wanted to drill them, is actually to figure out what volume. In zone 1, probably around half of the deposit is now in sulfide, which is basically brought into question the mining plan. And in 2000 South, we've continued that sulfide domain. And, in zone 13, we started to punch a few holes in there, and we've consistently shown that there's large, less grade, but large volumes of sulfide, probably around the 0.6 range, as opposed to around 0.9 for 2000 South and Zone 1. So I hope that explains that question, or answers that question a little bit better.
Yes, I think so. Thank you very much. And this guides me already into the next question. As I have understood from your presentation, your neighbor, Minto Metals, is already producing copper from sulfide deposits. So you have similar mineralization on your project. So are you already in contact with them? I mean, what is the business strategy? Build another mine next to them, which I think doesn't make too much of sense? Or do you think they are interested in you, or down the road, or as you have mentioned in your presentation, is there maybe a bigger copper company and potentially taking all what I can get in the whole belt.
Yeah,
what is your likely scenario?
There's a couple scenarios. For one, you're right. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to build the exact same mill where we are compared to where they are. But interestingly enough, even though we've got about 11 million tons, actually probably 12 million tons now of oxide material that they wouldn't be able to process. They have some oxide material, not as much, that they can't process that they stockpile. So there is a scenario where you would build an oxide processing plant in the southern part of the belt, and you would have a sulfide processing plant in the northern part, and maybe you're shipping ore both ways. That's one scenario. Another scenario is if they did put in an oxide plant at Minto, all of our ore would go up there. But I think really what our business strategy is to continue to develop the resource, to continue to develop a mining plan, and to continue to look for that larger copper producer that's going to recognize that Minto plus us is more than 2, it's 3, 4, or 5, right? That's the scenario, I think, where it's the most value for shareholders, and really you need a larger player to come in and really do a major consolidation. I mean, the economics have shown previously that a mine at our site would stand on its own. So that's still a possibility, and that's a goal that we need to work towards. But the bigger goal is to bring in somebody that can put together the whole package.
But that's good for you and the company and the shareholders. All options are open. There is another question, and as you know, it's the same thing on your end. Everybody from the investor audience looking on ESG. So what can you tell us is Granite Creek Copper doing in terms of environmental, social, and the government activities? Are there any topics you can point out here?
Yeah, there's a couple things I can mention. One is that we are in contact with the local First Nations, Little Salmon Carmacks First Nation. We are a significant employer during the summer months during our field season, but we want to go beyond that. We want to partnership with the First Nations on a development path. We're working towards that goal. We're in talks and discussions. A lot of getting to know you type meetings. And on the environmental front, it's interesting. So if we were to produce oxide copper, we would produce cathode copper at mine site. That means you're producing a highly refined final product, and that would be produced with hydroelectricity. So there would be no diesel. It would be a really clean copper that you could say would be quite green compared to other styles. Now we would need to work on ensuring that we had a similar environmental quality on the sulfide. That's something that we recognize and we'll continue to work on. And then the third point about that is that the project as proposed has a relatively small footprint compared to a larger mines. And it's much easier to mitigate any potential environmental impacts when you have a smaller footprint. We would look at dry stack tailings to try and avoid a large tailings containment. And there's things along those lines that we'll definitely look at as we update our preliminary economic assessment, and all that will be included in there.
Mm-hmm. So there is another question coming up, Tim. Nowadays, the safe jurisdiction is, I think, more important than maybe in the past few years. You are in the Yukon. There are certainly a lot of advantages. Can you explain and summarize those again? Not only infrastructure, also the support from the government. You have already operating mines there. So please give us a little bit of a further inside look.
Yeah, the Yukon is one of the top jurisdictions recognized globally for mining exploration and mining development. We've got phenomenal support from the Yukon government. They actively promote the sector. They actively work with companies to assist in development. And then we're part of what's called the Yukon Mining Alliance. So Yukon Mining Alliance is an alliance of 22 roughly exploration and mining companies that again work together collaboratively with government to solve the long-term problems of access, infrastructure, of the things that you need, and ESG as well to develop the resources within the territory.
Excellent. So I don't see any further questions. I may make a summary in German. And I thank you very much, Tim and Jake, for your presentation. It was very interesting to really have that direct information from management. Thank you very much, and we wish you good luck for the first drill campaign in 2022, of course, and hopefully you will have lots of news flow from the 2021 drill program. I think there is still some news pending. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, couple of news releases, some assay results yet, and some other work that we're doing.
Okay, so thank you very much again and all the best for you. Ja, liebe Gäste, jetzt noch kurz eine Zusammenfassung auf Deutsch. Ich denke, die englische Sprache ist hier auch etwas, was wir berücksichtigen müssen. Bei Granite Creek Copper handelt es sich um einen Kupfer-Explorer, aber das Schöne ist, der Kupfer-Explorer ist im Yukon in Kanada, also eine sogenannte Safe Jurisdiction, eine Geologie, die exzellent ist. Man hat schon eine bestehende Ressource, man hat weitere Bohraktivitäten dieses Jahr gestartet, die natürlich aber auch in 2022 weitergehen sollen. Es wird ein Ressourcenupdate geben. Das Ziel ist, über 1 Milliarde Pfund Kupfer zu erreichen. Und das Schöne ist, die Minto Metals ist ein Kupferproduzent ganz nebenan als Nachbar, der schon heute quasi Kupfer abbaut und auch dieses sulfitische Erz verarbeitet, das die Gesellschaft selbst ja auch hier exploriert. Und somit wird sicherlich die Chance bestehen, dass der Nachbar entweder das Material möchte zum Verarbeiten oder vielleicht sogar ein größerer Kupferproduzent kommt und den ganzen District im Yukon konsolidiert und vielleicht auch Interesse an beiden Aktivitäten hat, sprich an Granite und ihrem Partner und vielleicht auch in anderen Projekten. Wir haben das schon mal gesehen im Goldsektor, da hat auch ein großer Produzent mal kurz den ganzen District konsolidiert. Das ist sicherlich auch eine Opportunity, eine Chance hier und sicherlich dann auch im Interesse von den Granite Creek Aktionären. Wir sind selbst Aktionäre, das habe ich ja vorhin gesagt. Deswegen, wir sind davon überzeugt, dass das Unternehmen hier riesiges Potenzial hat. Die Marktkapitalisierung von 25 Millionen kanadische Dollar ist sicherlich erst der Anfang. Und wenn die Gesellschaft die Meilensteine hier liefern kann, wie von Tim und seinem Kollegen Jake auch dargestellt, sind wir eigentlich davon sehr überzeugt, dass da noch unheimlich viel Luft nach oben ist. Der Kupferpreis steht gut da, das Material wird benötigt, das hat ja der Tim auch gesagt. Und auf Jahre hinaus, glauben wir, wird die E-Mobilität und die Elektrifizierung sicherlich die Nachfrage deutlich übersteigen. Es ist auch ganz wichtig zu wissen, dass eigentlich die ganz großen Kupferminen eher zum Ende neigen. Das heißt, Exploration ist extrem wichtig, um neue Vorkommen zu entdecken, um quasi die Kupfervorräte auch wieder aufzufüllen. Und deswegen passt eigentlich Granite Creek perfekt in dieses Szenario der Verknappung des Materials, aber auch die steigende Nachfrage seitens unserer Industrienationen global. Also hier eine exzellente Ausgangssituation und dort, wo man schon was gefunden hat, in Kupfer, glaube ich, wird es auch weiteres Material geben. Von dem her, wir wünschen viel Erfolg der Gesellschaft. Ich bedanke mich recht herzlich fürs Webinar und fürs Zuschauen. Wir werden dieses Webinar aufzeichnen und deswegen alles Gute für Sie. Toi, toi, toi. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Dankeschön.